Tuatahi e tautoko ana i ngā mihi. Nā kua takoto ia paura, i te mea hoki e tika ana kia tīmata pērā tonu, a tātou hui katoa, ne? Kia honua te kiko ki te wairua, kia hei tātou te haere whakamua, te mehea kia rātou kua tiraha rātou kua huri ki tō te ārai, whakahokia mai rātou o te tahi wāpoto, kia mehia, kia tangihia ana ka whakahokia anō ki te ao wairua. E rā ahuatanga katoa e tika ana, kia whakare waina e tātou i mui i te tātitanga o tātou hui. E mihi ana kia koutou ko tā mai tēnei rā. Te ahu nei te katoa taku whare i haramai, kia kiki ngā mea, ngā tūru. Tēnei au e mihi atu nei kia koutou hoki o te mātāwai, nā te mea ko koutou hoki o mātou hoa i roto i te pakanga o tō tātou reo. Nā rere e tika ana, ia whakatakoto kōrero tahi māua ko poia i tēnei ahi. Koutou tonu, o tēnei whare, o ngā tari ka wanatanga, haramai nei i tēnei ahi, tēnei taku mihi, Basil, ki te atu au i a koe, TPK, tēnei wānera, hoi anō e mihi atu ana ki a koe. Koutou katoa i haramai nei. Ka nui te mihi, ka nui hoki te aroha, kia koutou tonu, ki tō tātou reo, e ki nei au te reo o Aotearoa, ne. Koe nei anake te reo, i tipu mai i roto i tēnei whenua, haria mai i etahi atu reo, e engari no wahau ke. Nā ko tō tātou reo, te reo Māori, he reo no te moana nui ākiwa, i tīmata mai, te kōrero mai kia mātou i roto i āhia, heke haere mai i roto i te moana nui ākiwa, taino mai. Tatau te ki Ngāti Parau, engari tata ka tai mai ki i roto Aotearoa nei. Kia ora tātou. Tēnei āhuatanga, te pēti hana. Nā me āta whakaaro tātou mo taua wāra. Kāre he reo Māori i roto i ngā kura, kāore he kura kaupapa, kāre hoki he kōhanga reo, ko te toko maha o te tangata, kāre nei e rata ana ki te reo. Ahakoa i roto i taku hapori o te araroa, katoa ngā pakeke oku kōka, oku pāpā, e hunga kōrero Māori. I pērā rawa i etahi atu rohe hoki, pērā tonu i a tūhoi, engari ko mātou tonu, ngā tamariki o tau wara, i ākina kia kaua e kōrero Māori. Kia huri ki te reo Pākehā hei oranga mō mātou tonu. Nā rere i au e tamariki ana a rongo au i te kōrero. Eta, maumau nui ho te reo Māori, ka reku e whiwhi mahi te reo Māori. Maumau tāma. Nā rere i tonu au kia haere ki i Tīpene. E kura noho i roto i te tonga o Akarana, i reira au mo te whātau. I aua i reira, i mataku au, kei tohu au ki te whai kōrero. Nā reira i ngū taku waha, nā ka tatu atu ki te whare wānanga, ara ka hoki anō ki te kōrero Māori. I runga anō i te wāriutanga o te reo Māori i reira. Nā reira, ko te Aotearoa o taua wāra, te Nutirini rānei, e pērārawa. Ka tāi atu au ki roto o Akarana, kia kite au kia toro atu au i oku whanaunga i reira. Nā ka mea kē rātou Papataui, nā ka mea Papatoetoi tērā, ana kata kē rātou. Ka mea Kotuku Street, nā ka mea rātou Katuku Street, ka kata kē rātou kia. Pērā tore, nā reira i pōhe au, ki oku whakaaro, ko oku whanaunga katoa o te tāne he Pākehā. Engari ka tatu atu ki te whare wānanga, nā wai ā ka mārama haere au, haha i pērā i rātou. Nā reira ka huri tērā pōhehetanga ki te aroha o te hunga i tipu mai i roto i ngā tāone. Nā reira ēnei āhuatanga katoa i reira, i taua wāra. Te wā i piki ai ngā tāngata nei, i ngā arawhata o te pāremata, ki te whakatakoto i te pēti hana reo Māori. I rongo au i tētahi e mea nei ēta, i whawhai nui ho rātou, kia kona te reo Māori i ngā kura. Nara, me āta whakaaro, kei te heke tēnā, he tino whawhai tērā nā te mea he pērā rawa te kaikiri o Aotearoa i taua wāra. Kāre e pērā ana ki i nei rā. Te nui o te tangata, o tō tātou whenua, e mea ana ko te reo Māori he wāhanga nui o tō tātou tua kiritanga. Nā reira, kaua tātou e pōhehe, e hara tēnei mahi te mahi nui, he mahi nui rawa atu, he mahi rangatira, i puta i a Robert Paufare, i a e kōrero ana, i te pāremata, i mekia tōna mahunga, i āia, i kimi haere ana i ētahi moko, hainatanga rānei, mo te Pētihana, i pērā rawa New Tireni i tau wāra. He āwa no tērā. Te Taurewhiri, i te reo Māori, we were established in 1987 as one of the, as a result of the petition. The petition is really, really important because it kicked off our current Māori language revitalisation strategy. If it hadn't happened, Te Taurewhiri mightn't have come about. Te Mātāwai mightn't have come about. We mightn't have had Māori TV, kohanga reo, all those things. But a bunch of young people from university got together and put themselves at quite a bit of risk, actually, to get those signatures. And I just wanted to underline what I said in Te Reo Māori earlier on. I heard somebody say, oh, that petition is a waste of time. It was just to get Te Reo Māori taught in schools. Well, you have to imagine what New Zealand was like back then, and it was definitely not like what it is now. And I can tell you, I can remember as a child at Te Waho Rerekohu Area School, the centre of the world, we had our first ever Māori language class in 1975, 3 years after the petition was presented. And I can remember my uncle, Wai o te Ora Wāno, Stone Wāno we called him. I don't know how Wai o te Ora became Stone, but it did. Taking that first class, and it was the first time I'd ever seen him happy at the school. Because he loved Te Reo Māori and he wanted us to speak and to learn it. In fact, he wasn't supposed to talk to us in Māori in class, but he did. And so that was my first experience with Te Reo Māori in school. Because when I went home, everything was in Māori. All my aunties, all my uncles, my grandfather, my mother, all spoke Māori to us. But there was one thing that was really put out in front of us. Maumau taima te reo Māori, kare koe whiwhi mahi te reo Māori. The Māori language is a waste of time, you won't get a job. And I can tell you now, with the exception of a couple of cleaning jobs, I'm really glad that I spoke Māori. I would have been jobless. So, you need to understand in New Zealand what that was, and that has, and the whakapapa that has led us to where we are today. And today, we're in a pretty good position, right? We know that 8 out of 10 New Zealanders believe that Te Reo Māori is central to our national identity. It wasn't like that in 1972. We know that 75% of public servants value the reo that they have and want to grow it. We know from the last General Social Survey that there are 400,000 speakers of Te Reo Māori in New Zealand now. Now that's a huge progression on the last census that was taken, which said we had around 150,000. So if those are correct, if all of those data sources are correct, we should have our million speakers before 2030, but I'm not holding my breath. Yeah? So there were a lot of things that happened from 1987 when we were established through to 2015 when I came into the job. And when I arrived at Te Taurewhiri, the discussion was really, really, it had heated up about what the new Te Reo Māori Bill Act was going to look like. And it was going to look very different for Te Taurewhiri. But I think we needed to look back at the 30-odd years that had happened from 1987 to 2015 and some of the things that we had learned. And one of the things that we had learned was that e kore e taia e te whakahaere kotahi. Ne? One organisation cannot do it all. We actually needed to get everybody to work together. And we're still trying to do that in 2022, right? And it's really hard in a sector where you have your central agencies that are all focused on what the minister wants. And that tension between trying to deliver the government of the day's policy and deliver to the people of New Zealand. That is the tension for the central agencies. Not so much for us, the entities that sit just outside of the central agencies, where we have the minister can jump up and down at our board chairs and we can just go and hide away behind them. So one organisation cannot do it all. Working together is the key. This is a big one for Te Taurewhiri because our central premise really is to promote Te Reo Māori. Evidence, right? We need, we soak up data like nothing, especially our comms team, particularly for the promotion of Te Reo Māori. I heard somebody say, It sounds like the Taurewhiri does marketing rather than promotion. Hold on, they're the same thing, right? If you don't know who you're promoting to, then you're wasting your time. And so we know a lot about New Zealanders, psychodemographically, as well as gender, race, location, all those types of things. Tēnei mea te whakamanamana, ne? The old egos. Everybody wants to make their mark in the sector, right? And I can remember about 2 years after I got into the job, one of my mates said to me, good guy, said to me, bro, te reo Māori's never been hotter in post-colonial New Zealand. Everybody's going to want to jump on your waka, even though they're in danger of overturning it. And that's exactly what's happened. So the ego thing needs to be put aside. Look, for me, it's my thing is about make the most of what you got and do the best job you can. Put the ego aside. Value and use your resource wisely. We don't have a lot of money. In fact, at one stage in 2018, 2019, we had a baseline of $4.2 million. But that still didn't mean we couldn't do the job that we needed to do. We now have a baseline of 11.2. One day we'll beat the ballet. Sorry about that, I couldn't resist it. Understand the production line and your role in it, right? Now, we know where all of our speakers are coming from. They're coming out of Kura Kaupapa and Wharekura, right? The problem is only 20% of Māori children of school age are actually in Māori medium. Sorry, it's Kura Kaupapa and immersion, total immersion. That's where our new speakers are coming from. The other issue that we have is that only 1 out of 5 Māori speak the language. So when we start looking at intergenerational transmission of the language, only 1 family, Māori family in 5, is able to do it, because the other 4 families can't speak te reo. So there's something we have to address there. But the production line, if we look at it, our new native speakers are coming out of total immersion te reo, out of education. So it's kind of like what the school tooketh away, the school putteth back, right? It's interesting. And this final thing here, Māori cannot revitalise te reo on our own. And we can't. We've been trying to do it for 30 years and it hadn't worked. And one of the frustrating things for me as a parent of Kura Kaupapa children is having my children at 10, 11 years of age refuse to speak Māori to me. And then one day I asked them, I said, how he pērai? Well, Papa, all the cool songs are in English, right? All the news is in English, all the radio stations are in English. Only you fellas speak Māori at the marae and at home and at school. And so you cannot revitalise a language in a vacuum. Everybody needs to be on board. The fact now that people come home from overseas and freak out when they watch the news, or even freak out when they talk to their friends who are using so much te reo, regardless of who they are. And look, it's really important. That last one there, we need everybody on board. We can bring up, that the C word, colonisation, and all those types of things, or we can get on with revitalising the language and looking forward. Look, I'm not going to go into all of these, but after 30 years, this is in 2011. The government appointed Te Paepae Motuhake to review what had happened. And these are the recommendations they made. And all of those recommendations have been implemented apart from a Minister for Māori Language. Just imagine that, eh? Minister for Māori Language would be awesome. But what it would mean is that if we had a Minister for Māori Language, then there would have to be a central agency that would be responsible for te reo. And I think that's why that one got sidestepped. The state of te reo in 2015, when the new act was being put together, fluent speakers down from 25.2% of Māori population in 2001 to 21% in 2013. Only 0.6% of the non-Māori population could speak Māori fluently, and 3% of the total population speak te reo fluently, and that's with Māori speakers chucked in. So 97% of the New Zealand's population, karne mohi te kōrero Māori. The Māori Language Act came in 2016, established a partnership between Māori and the Crown, Te Whare o Te Reo Mauiora, the House of the Living Language, established Te Mātāwai to represent Māori focused on Māori communities, or the micro-focus. And that's important because a lot had been expected of Te Tautawhiri before this. We were looked at as the one-stop Māori language shop, but we couldn't deliver on all those expectations. We just weren't resourced enough to do it, and we needed more of a presence in the communities. We were bumped over to the side of the Crown and focused on the public sector and wider New Zealand, or the macro view, and two dual complementary strategies, the Mahi Māori and the Mahi Korona, were put together. Mahi Māori was put together by Te Mātāwai, and the Mahi Korona put together by a group of public sector agencies. So what it meant for us was a new role. We weren't anymore the one-stop shop for Te Reo Māori, and what we had to do was to start looking, first of all, at our approach. And that approach is underpinned by three things. Whakawhanaungatanga, which is not building relationships, it's inclusions. It's finding reasons to bring everybody into the whare. How Te Reo connects us all together as New Zealanders, right? Manaakitanga, caring for people. I get really hoha when I see a fluent speaker giving somebody a hard time, particularly a learner, because they've made a mistake, Learning, getting things wrong, making mistakes is all a part of learning. There's a way to be supportive other than telling people, giving somebody a hard time because they've made a mistake. So that was a big part of it, but also making, you don't invite people into your whare and then you leave them sitting there starving at the table without a cup of tea and a biscuit, right? You want to make them feel welcome. So manaakitanga, very important. So we had a real emphasis on being kind to learners. And taunaki, evidence. For us, evidence is God, right? Because the evidence tells us where people are, what they're doing, how they live their lives, their attitudes, and so we can shape our promotions to ensure that they're hitting the mark. And this is our business model. Promotions Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. We do a Waitangi Day promotion as well. We've got our storytelling kaupapa going. If you had anything to do with Te Reo Māori over the past 50 years, you might want to go onto the website, reomaori.co.nz, and put your story down there. We lead the implementation of the Mahi Korona. We provide language planning support. We run the Te Papa Kōrero, which is a CEOs forum, public sector CEOs forum, which looks to support the implementation of the Mahi Korona through the sector. We have our Māori language services, translators, interpreters license, the Level Finder exam. So if you want to find out where you are in terms of your language proficiency, you can sit that exam. And also lexical development, or the development of new words, and there are others as well. And then research and evaluation. In our new role, we've learned some things over the past 5 years as well. Marketing and product testing is essential. We get so little money, we can't afford to waste $400,000 or $500,000 on Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. So we test first. This tohu here came out of marketing. It came out of testing. And what we used to change, I don't know if you remember this, but we used to change the tohu and the kaupapa for Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori all the time prior to 2016. And we did that because we had always done it, basically. But what it did was it prevented us, or prevented people from building any kind of brand loyalty with Te Wiki. So we went to Colmar Brunton and we asked them, Rachel Pitter at Colmar Brunton, and asked her to run some online focus groups to develop a brief for this. And out of that brief, this went up to Katarina Ellis, or Katarina Kerekere she is now, up in Tolaga Bay, and she came back with this, and I'm pretty sure my staff added the rainbow colours in. And I can tell you now, when I saw those rainbow colours, I thought, woohoo, right? Not because it's cool, but because it means that all of my LGBTQ plus nephews and nieces get included. So everybody looks at this and goes, Te Reo Māori's for me. It is the coolest thing about it. An inclusive and kind approach works, right? There's that whole thing. I'm not too sure if there's a Māori proverb for it, but what's that one? That you get more flies with honey than vinegar. Yeah. So when you're nice to people, they're more likely to come visit your house, eh? Understanding who our people are is critical, right? understanding who people are, how they live their lives, how te reo fits in with their lives. Like, for instance, we know, if you're anything like me and you're a public servant, right, you get up in the morning, you have a fight with your kids to go to school, you get to school and you're about 5 minutes away from ending it, right? And then you work, you get all stressed out, and then you finish at 5 o'clock and it starts up again, right? And so at about 9 o'clock when you're sitting down to watch TV, 2 minutes away from ending it, the last thing you want to do is learn te reo Māori, right? Or learn anything, you just want to rest. Actually, you want to put your kids back, but you can't. So, you know, when's the best time to learn te reo Māori? When you're at work as part of your work, right? That's one of the things that we've come up with. Hoatu homai, you've got to give something, you got to give something to get something, right? Koe no hoki. Kārehe aha ki roto, kārehe aha ki waho, ne? So you put something in, you get something out. And this one here, this one right down the bottom here, the most important one of all. Learners are the future of the language, regardless of whether they're, you know, born into a whānau where intergenerational transmission is happening, or whether they're going to a community class, a class at university, kura kaupapa, whatever. Learners are the future of the language. And so we really need to value them and grow their numbers, because the more of them there are, the more potential speakers of te reo there are. So I'm going to finish there because I've already gone too long. And e mihi ana ki a tātou ne. Nā te mea hoki, I ki mai tētahi me reo Māori e nei kōrero, whakaaro au nā te mea, ko i nei kōrero he ara etahi karne mohe te kōrero Māori, me reo rua taku whakatakoto kōrero, kei a pōi a tāna. Nā rere e mihi ana ki a tātou, kia ora tātou katoa mo tēnei wā.
Whakaro You wouldn't have another presentation up there, would you? Ia hoko rā te atiawa e tau nei, tēnei ka mihi te atiawa e tangi nei, tēnei hoki ka tangi ngā tahi o koutou. Kia koutou, ko tai mai, tēnei te mihi, kia koutou e tangi nei, tēnei hoki tātou ka tangi. Always didn't want to go after the handsome guy, but never mind, so be it. Here we go. Tēnā tātou kua hui nei, i rungi tēnei kau papa. Mati ahara i te karangi a tātou kia kotahi raro i te ana whakamarumaru o tēnei whare. Nā reira ngā taonga tēnei hoki koutou e whakahui mai nei a tātou i tēnei rang. Alright, so e ho, 50 years. Ka tarai te whakawhiti pēnā i a nā iwi. I've been told that my English is just as unintelligible as my Māori, so I'm not too sure what to do here. Okay. E mue te timatei nā koro nei, te whakahuatua tai a nā iwi koe rā i kawe nei te piti ana ki te paremata. Ai me maumarano tātou ki o rātou mātua kuia koroua i whakatō i whakatō i tērā mana, nui o te mana ki rata i a rātou tamariki, mokopuna, i kahai rātou ki te haere ki mui tērā huinga. Rātou hoki ki te mate haere tanga o te reo, nā reira i mohi o rātou he mate kai mui te aroaro, e tātou ma e oho o te peti ana tērā. It's picking up on nā iwi I think to acknowledge the parents and grandparents of those who took the petition because their parents, as Nahui said, from their hometowns, embedded their belief in the Māori language as something worth fighting for. So that goes pre-1972, but when you look at them, Pēnea tātou e tiro nā tūnei kia koutou, like you here today, we hope that that same fire will burn within us, that we won't let it out either. So, pitiana, ki te mate haeretanga o te reo. So, in the decline of the language, okay, some of them woke up, some of our iwi still didn't. I'm talking about some of our iwi out in some of the areas where that area was okay. But kaare pērungu i tērā mamai. So the pain is a big driver there, loss, the threat, a big drivers there. So 50 years ago, petition, whānau mai, i rungi nā kora nā iwi, nā tuākana. Kora mihi nei ki te mātawa e tuākana mō mātau i tēnei ra, mō tātou. 1987, the Act, status of the language. Putting it back into the schools, like Naiwi said, and we've got to believe that there was no way our ancestors foresaw that by taking it into the education system, it would remove it out of the homes. I don't think that was ever the intention. However, 44 years later, what the mātawa e trying to take some of that back into the homes. So kura tāna i te wā i taimai e te ara te pai mutsuhake, Crown, you've had a good go at it, thank you. Acknowledge you for your efforts, honestly. Acknowledge you, but the language is still declining. Paipa Mutsuhake said, why don't you try giving it back to the people whose hearts are filled with that fire and filled with the desire to keep it alive. So, quite ironically, as the Naiwi said, someone to fuel that fire was given the name of water. Te mātāwai tēnā e pupu ana i ngā maunga, e heke ai ia ki ngā rāurau, ka mahoro horatira, ka heipūratu i ngā moana. So trying to take the language in all the other areas in our homes and our valleys so we can come back and meet again as an ocean of language. And this is the mātāwai in Taure Whiri Te Reo Māori, ko te whakamoana i era kitanga, i era hakoranga, bringing all the evidence from our communities, the public sector, education, everything together, put it through a filter again, have a chat and see how we can refine our delivery. Hei motu. So I'm going to boast here because as the little brothers do, you know, we don't get much. Big brother's been on the scene a lot longer. Everyone knows he can sing, everyone knows he can dance, but no one knows what the little brother can do. So, okay, ko koro sia tera, kai timo ko te tera whakapapa ana, e te mara mana tera. Yeah. But the main thing, noting from in the early 1900s, large percentage of fluent Māori speakers got down to 10 years ago, dropped down to about 21%. And that's when it said, hey, something needs to happen. Te mātawa, te taurewhiri te reo Māori, stop the decline. Okay, taurewhiri, stop the decline. Okay, now we need to plateau and now to try and grab back up. Hara mai, whānau mai ko te mātawa i rungi tēnā. Oops. Oh. I'm even faster than the slides. But kone no te rako te mahi a te nui a te taurewhiri. Get our public sector on board, synchronise, collectively contributing to our language. Te mātawa, you go back and engage with our interesting, diverse Māori whānau entities, all those diverse opinions, positions, and come back and see how we can make that happen together, so we get it happening everywhere. So koera nā mātua putunga te whāinga te mātāwe, taking the language back into home. A language used, he reo ka kōrero tia tērā. And this isn't just the mātāwe doing this, Te Whiri is also pushing for that as well, okay, amongst all of its other activities. So we have the three things in the middle, tuakiri mohana ko te identity around language and identity and language. An intergenerational component, it's got to be 3 generations. Now we spoke about the tamariki. If it doesn't get to that tamariki, that fire will burn out. Rumaki is providing the environments for that language can be normalised and naturalised. So all the things that the mātawa just said, well, just whai oranga te whānau me te kōkiri te reo, put those wrap it around so that the language, all these activities aren't going in isolation. Trying to anyway. Ono tau no te pakaki, we're only 6 years old, so we're going to see if it works. We'll tell you next year. Okay. Ta mātawa te pōtiki, he rua nā putanga o tērā, ko te pōtiki, koe te mōkai, koe nā rāne te mea whakarurengaha. So as the newbie, the last born one gets all the care, gets all the hand-me-downs too, but gets all the love, gets all the lollies. Whakarurengaha, ko yoki te mea ka whiua ki te kōrero. Nā te mea whakarurengaha tērā, the last one was getting the growlings too. Okay? Whakapaua, whakarure te hao, nā mātua, nā pākeki ki rungi te tamaiti paku ne. For whatever reason, spoiled or lucky. So koene nā huatanga o te mātāwa i rungi tana noho mai hei pōtiki tēnei wā. Koene no te whakarāpopoto no tēnei ngā mai a te mātāwa. O te mana tuatahi, o te whai a te mātāwa i te mana motuhaki. Tērā mana motuhaki ahu mai anei ngā iwi. So we're based in Wellington as an office, but all of the a lot of the recommendations, the decision making has devolved. So I said, lovely environment. If you want to come and then work with all 109 iwi, hara mai ki te mātāwe. It's easy as. I think my hair was black when I started. And I don't want to be like now and have nothing left when I finish. Te ko te mana motu ake tērā, whakaoki te mana ki nā iwi hei whakatau. So I'm just going to have a couple of examples there. Whakapuhia, so because we are engaged with the people, they do have a nice manner with us. So whakapuhia, we're giving all the blessings of the young child. But the mātai represent the people. Again, you talk about the legislation. The mātai came out of legislation eventually. So legislation you got the Māori Language Act. Then from the Act, you had a Crown Māori Language Strategy. And then from the Pai Mutsu Hake, you had the review of the Act. So from the review of the Crown Act, you got the Mātāwe. So these have all come out from the Crown ultimately. So I just keep that in perspective, but taking the authority back to the people ultimately. We're not there yet. We're probably quite a way off from that yet. A few challenges along the way, which I shall briefly talk about. Hoi no, ko te wawata tera. Ko te wawata no tera, ki hoki tera mana, ki te iwi no na te reo. Ki ngā iwi, ki ngā whānau, ngā kaihana hapuri no rātau te reo. So, we connected to all these lovely regions, and please don't shoot me down for the regions. People came out of the Māori Language Advisory Group, that's the winnie in them. Okay. But tried to find a model to give more representation to the people. So as you can see, it was just a starting model. Okay. I'm sure we'll go through some changes. Te reo tukutuku, those are our whānau who are not sure where they are. They might be Ngāti Porou when they're home, but then who are they when they come to Pōneke? So all those all have a whānau urban Māori, 3 generations Māori in our urban areas. So that's to cater for those who are more comfortable in their now. So I'm sure Nahui wishes here 13 on his board. Okay. So again, if you didn't get funded, if you didn't get an investment fund in front of Mātāwe, look for the people up there. Just putting it out there, whānau. Kaua wai mai ki a pōia i te tari. Arana mea hei manawa wera makuta, wera. Okay. So those are the people who have all the regions covered and the advisory groups out there to represent the 109 iwi. Okay. That's just an example of a Kāhui investment plan. So they make the plan out in the region, we don't in the office. And that's what the advisors they have. And they come up with what works in their area. Rata kina me rungu ana te tuki o te manawai, rungi o rātou whenua o rātou wai. So all that's developed and the recommendations come from the iwi. Okay. So, ko te mate o tēnei hangone, te pōtiki e te wā e whakaruri ana i ngāha. There's a couple of other areas the Mātāwa is not known for yet. And these are the Mātāwa e toa mahita i te krauna, mo te whakaraura te reo Māori. And when you want to change an 150-year habit, it's challenging. So ko te tamaiti tēnei e tohe ana, iahi pēnai, ana. Ka tiki mera i te huarahi, e pakari ai ia i tōna ao, e Māori tonu ai ia i tōna ao, i tēnei ao e noho nei ia. So the Mātāwa have been a partner that's a huge mind shift that requires the state to take on. But I'm sure they're all intelligent people. They'll come around. But help from Nahiwi and beyond. Tuatai, arataki i ngā tari. Ngā pokapū karauna. We haven't quite, te Mātāwa, we're still developing. We haven't been able to lend that much support everywhere. With Nahiwi and other nā tari ka wanatanga tautoko nei te reo Māori. We're not quite there yet, but we'll come in. Hei te wai pakari ai te tū, kua tae noa e rā ringa te āwhina. So all of those navigating the different approaches, taking it back to iwi, giving another one authority, those are challenging. Ona te wakatau mai nā hao ngā iwi. But taku mana tiki o te Mātāwa, ko te kawe ngā take o te iwi Māori, ki te ngā minita. Talked about that. So one of those forums is, and it's called Te Runeng Reo, sorry. Te Runeng Reo. It's a forum where ministers come together with the Mātāwa to talk about the strategy and the way forward. It's still developing. They're still learning the kawa, how to engage, but they're meeting. Nā re kai te tepu ko tai e hui ana. So, when the mātāwai goes into that forum, it doesn't think about the mātāwai only. It will look at te tau te whiri te reo Māori, te māngai pāho, whakaata Māori, te manatū taonga. Anyone who is invested in language, if the Crown is doing anything to halt or make it challenging for them to do their business, that's the Mātāwai's business as a partner in the revitalisation of the language. As I said, that's still in work in progress. And those are the ministers that we're meeting with currently. And some others. Trying to make as many friends over there as possible while they're still in power. So ko te runa ngā reo tērā. So te mātāwai, ko tai te tūru engari, te kau mātoru nā mema ka tāia te noho I tērā tepu. Te mātāwai says who it wants it on its side of the table. Te karauna, they say who they want. Kei te pai. Okay, so this is where we're trying to, again, work in progress te mātāwai to help and support. Koutou nā mea, e kawe nei te reo tui nā kaupapa here, te ture, te hanua, te hanu. So trying to support that area. Yeah, that's the whare. Now we can talk more about that at another stage. Te whare o te reo Māori ora. But that's trying to bring it back to Māori, that mō tātou ki te whare, ka tai ki tō marae, ko tai ana ki te haukainga. Nei, ko tai ana ki te mana whenua. Ana, te tikana ko te, kai te mātāwai tērā, e pai ai te whakatau, he harā te kawa ratu I te whare. Ki hea mea noho ai, ki hea mea tū ai, ai ai a kuhu mai, ai a whakawāte ai. So that's the type of concept that's there, but again, trying to get all parties conscious of that model is still in development. But kei kona te pitomata. So there's potential there. Kone te whaenga te, ka hirua tiki te mai I Māori kuru ia nā e nā iwi, in terms of the Māori strategy for Māori, this is what the Mātāwai aims to do, to develop an informed, connected, sustainable, influential whānau and community leadership model. Ko te ranua mea ana, he wā tōna, kai tēnā iwi, kai tēnā whānau na tōna kaha, he kaui ana kaupapa mo te reo. Pai no te wawata, te moe a, engari, ringoi nā koro a pōtatau ki te kore e whakakitenga ka ma te iwi. So that's a vision we strive for. I don't know who put these slides in. So we're trying to be all of this, connected, informed, whakapono rangatira, uka uka. Koina no e mea ana, e ratu I nā tauire tēnei ua, we've seen whānau become capable. We've seen them connect with each other. We've seen them know their business more, from doing applications to reporting and to organising themselves. And hei te wā ko rātou ke, nā rangatira wā rātou kaupapa. And the last thing is for that to be sustainable. Ara, sustainable not just in the language, intergenerational transmission, but sustainable in terms of our whānau Māori being their leaders, believing in themselves, and one day perhaps whakapono ana ki te karauna, he hua pai ke ratu I ana mai. Been a lot of tension between our whānau and the Crown in the past, and a bit of mistrust. Nā re kia kaha ki a koe nā iwi, te kōkiri tēnā mea e whakapono ai o tātai iwi ki roto I nā, o tātou hoa roto I nā tari kāwanatanga. Yeah, what I said all that. I'm sure I only had 5 slides myself. Te wawata nui rā, kia hoki mai rā, te reo ki taku waha ki ake ake. But I hope that one day it'll be as it was in the late 1800s, when the language was not being learned, it just was. not been taught, it is. Nā koere no te pakupuna kau e ua maka aku rangatira, mea ne kia koutou. Whakamātaitau I nai ni.
Kare te pone mori karika noa, te ohonga ki te ao ka ngu taku reo. Kanana ki te mana o aku tipuna, ko te mana tuatahi, ko te mana motu hake, ko te mana tuarua, ko te tiriti o waitangi, ko te mana tuatoru, ko te tūrere o Māori, e toru ngā mahi a te mata wai. Taku mahi tike tike, he kawe I ngā take a te iwi Māori ki ngā minita. Taku mahi tuarua, mahi tahi ki te kauna, hei whakarau ora I te reo Māori. Taku mahi tuatoru, arataki ngā tari a te iwi, kia hoki mai rā te reo ki taku waha, ki ake ake.
Kia ora tātou.
I think we've got about half your haere ki a tātou, e toi ana. So we can take some questions. I was given a list of questions o te āhua nei, ko oti pai I a kōrua. But ia koutou e whakaaro pātai ana. I suppose, tāku pātai tuatahi ki a kōrua nei, ko ki a kōrua whakaaro ko huri te tai. I mean, as I was saying to Poia before, ka tātou ki te kura o taku kōtero he rima tau, and whakatipu rua mano. And taki kareke ana nā tamariki, pātere, mō tētea. And I was saying to my cousin at school, when we were at Kiki Primary, when we were 5, we were singing, this land is your land, this land is, B-I-N-G-A. But nā reira ko huri te tai?
Oh, well, it depends on how you look at it, eh? If you look at the number of New Zealanders that value te reo Māori, yeah, the tide has turned. Attitudes towards te reo Māori are vastly different from what they were back in 1972 to probably what they were even 6 or 7 years ago. And we keep on seeing the measures coming up, or the indicators coming up in the, in research studies like the General Social Survey. The issue still is, though, your language doesn't live through value. Value is the first stage. So if somebody values a language, they're more likely to learn it, right? The issue is to turn all of that value that we're seeing between 75% to 85% of New Zealanders who value te reo Māori, and turn them into learners, and then turn those learners into speakers. And that's a bit of a process, because as we know, you don't just go to the shop and buy te reo. You have to invest a significant portion of your life to learn it. And if you're Māori, you're thinking to yourself all the time, this is my language, why am I so koretake at it, right? Why aren't I as good as I should be? This is my language. And if you're Pākehā, you're sitting there thinking, oh, should I be in this class? Am I guilty of cultural appropriation? Should I vacate my seat for a Māori? Is this my language? All those types of things are going on in the hearts and the minds of learners. And so the infrastructure now is really, really important. It's how the infrastructure is able to cater for the current demand, and the issue, and what we're seeing is that we are thousands of teachers short. There's huge demand, unprecedented demand. We have some of our educational institutions coming back saying there are 3 times as many people on waiting lists as there are actually in classes. We also have a byproduct of that too, where there is this fear amongst Māori that somehow we're losing out. That somehow by Pākehā learning the language, they're taking something away from Māori. My thing is that that's going to happen anyway. There are going to be more non-Māori speakers than there are Māori language speakers if we continue along the road that we are, simply because there are more of them than there are of Māori. It's a simple numbers thing. But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So you can't complain about going to the bank or going to the shop and not being able to do your transactions in te reo Māori, and those people are not allowed to learn the language, right? So in order to have your cake, you have to allow everybody else to learn as well. And that ensures that when our children are coming home from kura kaupapa and from total immersion and they turn on the news, they hear the language being pronounced properly, they hear people like Simon Dello and Melissa Stokes using it, and even turn on to TV3 and hear the same thing too. It's that type of wraparound that we need for our children. So rather than seeing it, for me, rather than seeing it as something we're losing, seeing it as the wraparound support for our children that are going through rumaki. The other thing we need to understand too is that I get this all the time from when I go home back in Te Ngāti Porou. It's always good to go home for a holiday. If you go home to live, they think you're trying to steal something. Anyway, we won't go there. But I'll invariably be asked the question, hey, Ngāhiwi, why do you want all these Pākehās to speak Māori? And I'll say, oh yeah, what's wrong with it? Well, we might lose the mana of our language. Oh, okay. How long have we been speaking English for? I don't know. I said, all around the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, about 180 years, right? Yep. And I said, and tell you what, the English are really tough, eh? And he said, why? Well, because after 180 years of speaking their language, we still haven't been able to wrestle the mana of it off them, right? They still have the mana of their language. You see, a language has mana because it's spoken. That's what gives a language mana. So the more people that speak te reo Māori, the more mana it has. And that's the attitude I take towards it.
Ia o whakaaro e puia. Arona ki nā nai Māori kore tai te kōrero Māori. E noho roti te whakamāne.
Kuna pē te whakauti te pātai mena koe huri te tai. Huri ia i etahi wāhanga engari ka etahi wāhanga kare anu. So the figures Nahiwi talks about of non-Māori enrolling and lining up for Māori classes. What if we had that same quantum of Māori lining up to go into our kura? And then I might say, yeah, I think the tide has changed. Poko ne te whakamātai te waro ki te iwi Māori. Ana, so I mentioned the thing about the whakapono. They're still cautious about where they're sending their kids in some of their beliefs. Pero ki oku mātua, ka re whakapono he hua tō te reo Māori. From the time they lived and what they experienced, they couldn't see the value in it. Engari, nā mahi whakatairanga te tauriwhiri te reo Māori, ki te apeara ke he hua tōna. Yeah, it's got some value. Ma reira pē e aki nā tamariki, nā mātua, ki te whakaau i ara te tamariki ki hari ki ngā kura. And then beyond the learning that Nai talks about, I think it's got to be intergenerational. So if bloody Paora here goes and learns Māori and then he stops speaking at 5 o'clock when he leaves the office, and then his kids are at home, there's no guarantee, there's no sustainability, natural sustainability.
Oh, yeah, let's not go there. I mean, it is a bit of an investment, he pakanga nui te kāinga, because, worst thing I think I did it was we bought Alexa. So, the 3-year-old, Alexa, play this, Alexa, play that. Alexa, kore koe mo hoki te kōrero Māori. So, he pakanga nui, i te kāinga, nā tamariki, is what they've seen around them, nā iwi, what you're saying.
Yeah, can I add just one last thing too? There was a finding that's not really talked about that came out of Richard Benton's research back in the 1970s, and that was that just about every community that was researched said until Pākehā value te reo Māori, the language will not live. And I think we kind of, the C word comes up a lot, right? Colonisation. It comes up a lot, colonisation, this and that and all the rest of it. And I think, for me, I spend a good deal of my time in tertiary education, being paralysed by analysis around colonisation, right? And getting angry about it. I watched the Muru movie and got angry about it again, right? But really it's about what do we do with what we've got? What's the situation we have and how do we make the best of it? rather than drowning in that stuff, because you can drown in there very, very easily. But that whole thing around, the old people saying in that research that until Pākehā value te reo Māori won't live. And that's been one of the things that has driven Te Taurewhiri and what we've done.
We got any questions out in the audience? Pātai? Ko e whakamā?
Well, while you're thinking of some deep and meaningful questions, whānau, I think the other thing we've definitely seen the mātā way of devolving that, the decision-making back out to them, there's a bit of a shift in that side. Tērā whakapono tērā, it's the self-belief is increasing. So I think it's slowly.
Kei te mahitahi nā tari e rua? Ko ki te he kaupapa he mahitahi?
Oh, look, I'll be honest, we could do better. And look, nobody's to blame. And really it's around, for both of us, we both run boards. We both work under boards that are pretty strong. And look, it's taken me 7 years to get where I am with my board. The first 3 years were tough. I have to admit that. And, and you have Māori governors that have a very different governance view to other boards. And that's just the way it is. So for me, there's nothing worse than managing your board. You get into trouble. So it's around our boards getting together and saying, okay, this is the delineation, and then saying to me and Poya, you guys put together your work program, and that's what we'll be doing in the next few months or so.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Atonoa.
Te mātawa it's a challenging model. Because you said 13 board members representing 109 iwi. They don't come to the table all the time as Te Kahautu Maxwell or Paul Tamasil. If they come, all the aspirations and all the pain they come with, they're there to, there's no negotiation when they come to meet.
Okay.
Kei a koe rangatira tēnā kōrua. Tēnā kōrero mai, kia ha ētahi kauenga e kawe anei e kautau o roto, e kōrua o roto i o kōrua tari. E kia i te tau ki ko te reo kia tika, ko te reo kia rere, ko te reo kia Māori.
Mā noa ki te mātāwai. Mā te iwi anō e ki mai, ko tika tōna reo. Kona te reo tika, kai ai e te mana whakai me pēne te reo taku reo. Kaua mātau e pōne kenei, e kia tia ne te reo tika. Anei, me pēne te rere. Me pēne e Māori ai. Kona kua hoki atu a te whakatoi e ai kai au ki te tika o tōku reo. Kona te tauira te mātāwai.
Whakaiatu au ki tā Poia i me mai ai. Ko te wahanga ki te Taurewhiri, he whakatakoto i ngā tikanga e pāna ki te reo Okawa. Koira te reo kei roto i ngā kura, te reo kei runga i ngā haina i rātu āhuatanga. Engari ko te wahanga ki ngā iwi, kia rātau tonu tērā. E hara te Taurewhiri i te pāhi o te reo Māori, tarika wanatanga ke mātou. Ko ngā rangatiro o ngā iwi, ana ka tohua i o rātau iwi. Ko autonu i tohua au e waingata, taku whanaunga, koe no, tērā āhuatanga tērā, ko te wahanga kia te Taurewhiri, he whakatakoto, i ngā tikanga e pāna ki te reo Okawa, that's the Māori Language Conventions, ne? Engari te reo auaha, te reo aiwi, kei ngā iwi tērā.
I think you can be cognizant that when the Taurewhiri was established, there was one entity trying to stem that decline over 200 years. So when Māori had nothing to go to, the Taurewhiri was there. And as we develop and our post-settlement agreements, all of that, our people becoming more knowledgeable and reaffirming what they already know. So the Taurewhiri held that space when our people had nothing else, or had little else to go for.
Ka tika, no nā taonga hau ko tāku mahi Ia tarangi ko te mātakitaki nā kiriata tāwhito, nā hōtaka tāwhito. Pērā ia koha a te reo a tene mataira. Hea nā tino, ia kōrua tamarikana, hea nā tino hōtaka reo Māori, maumahara nei ia kōrua. Te rāpea ko te wahanga o kawa me kōrua o paki.
Kia ora truth tū nā iwi.
Maumahara koe tērā o nā hōtaka te reo, me nā rākau?
Well, te tino ki au ko pūkana ne, but I was a father of a child by then, and I was watching with my children, and I said, kia mātakitaki tātou I a pūkana. He paiti, ne. I watched it for me, not for them. But I remember when Koha was on, I remember, what's his name, Mr. Kora, running it. He was the presenter.
Kora,
yeah. I can remember, what else? I can remember as a child in the 70s, sitting down with my grandfather on a Sunday night to listen to the news in Te Reo Māori on the national program, and Bill Parker was the kaipānui, and they had a brass version of Haere Rā Hine, which was really interesting. That was the koina hoki te waiata mo tawa hōtaka. Koha came on, then Te Karere started just before I went to university. And that was a big thing, especially mō ku pāpā o ku kōkā o te kāinga. So mo te wātuata a hei rātou te mātaki i te pāko whakāta. Ara, e kōrero Māori mai ana Whai Ngata, Derek Fox, Tāwini Rangihau, Waiake, kōrero Māori ana. So maharau ki era. And tino mihi au ki a rātou, nā te mea he ua i tau wāra, he nui ngā kōrero whakahe, ki tō rātou tari matua, mō rātou e kōrero Māori ana, e rātu āhuatanga katoa, engari maharau ki era. Tētahi wā, ana ko te hōtaka mo te whakahokinga mai o ngā taonga o te Māori, ki roto Aotearoa, maharau ki tērā.
Pehea koe poi e tiwi kei Murupara?
Mate, first ones came out of Murupara. Marae. I marae koha te karere.
E nā koe tō tino kaiako reo Māori, ia kōru e tamariki ana. Kōrero Māori te kāinga o te kura rana?
O te mea hoki kāri he reo Māori i te kura tānoa mai ki te tau wari te kau Mārima. Nā ka haere ki Tepene. I reira tētahi kaiako ko Dennis Barnes tōna ingoa. He hoia te tangata nei. He hoia omua. Ka kia e mātou ko te Sergeant Major ne. Engari he autāe ki te ako i a mātou. Ka rau i mārama ki te wetewete reo i tau wāra. Engari nāna no i whakamārama mai e tahi āhuatanga. Taira wau ki te whare wānanga e te mate katoa i te wetewete reo. Engari ko te tino o ngā kaiako i aua i te whare wānanga ko Ruka Broughton.
Ruka Broughton, ai. Pihea koe te whare wānanga Waikato.
Te kaiako tuatai mo te reo Māori au i te kura tuatai ko Sophia Waitai. Te tai tokerau. There's a Tawhio school back in 1970-something. Nā koera te takukitenga tuatai o te reo whakahoi ane te kura. Haere ki nā. Pera hoki māua haere ki nā kura tama nei. Got taken into these boarding schools. Didn't know how to approach female. We came out of there. I'm just, had to learn the hard way. Whare wānanga, wai mare katoa i katoa. I wai katoa e maha na kaiako. Te katoa e kai iaia no tana haramai tana te reo o tōna iwi. Kai iaia te napuki na hiki o tōna reo, te rere o tōna reo. En katoa rere ki hakoranga māk. And so I was fortunate to learn probably of everyone except Naitahu. Really. And that was good for me because when my students used to say, oh no, this is our level of the tai rāwhiti, I would bring up, is that how that's it? No, that's not that. Kei te puru, hamuti tērā, puru eti tērā. But they all had different styles. And you all know them.
Did Timothy recite the Lord's Prayer when you gave a translation like he did with me?
That was his pet.
like Panya.
I can remember one particular experience with Timothy when I was running Radio Ngāti Pro, and I got to Gisborne Airport. I walked in the door just as he was coming in off the plane, and in front of about 1,000 people there, he starts going, "Apa nui e, ko koutou o te reo Ngāti Pro, te teihana kore take ki te kōrero Māori e." And I pretended I didn't see him, and I was trying to head off to the toilet. I ki te au ia koe hoki mai. Gotta love him though, eh?
Yeah, but I think they were Timothy anyway. I kau ia I tana reo taure whiri tērā. Ane I pakanga ia hako ea ka are koro pākia ki a koe. Nāna te tau te tuata ki a mātou kia no ko te kapaka te whare wānanga Waikato he kapaka reo Māori. Talking back in the mid-80s then.
Question? No te whare wānanga Waikato anō?
Kei nā tuakana, tēnā kōrua. Pātai I tēnei koa hua kōrero hea, kōrua I roto I nā kōrero I te rānei. Ko taku pātai, hea te mea ua rawa o te whare o te reo Māori ora, kia kōrua. Kia ora.
Ko te whakahuihui I ngā puari e rua, koina. Mātaua hui anō ka tau te wāhanga kia mātau tonu o te taurewhiri, kia pōia hoki me tāna tira, nā te mea I tēnei wātonu, ana kei te mahi mātau I a mātau mahi, engari ko te hao te ngākau kia mahi tahi kia pōia.
I zuru he te rātauira ringo te koutou o mātātsu moana ki te koro, kārete te ona pakitara I te koro ki tētai. Te te ona pū ki tētahi, ana hoki atu ki te tauira nāhiwi. There just wasn't enough conversation going on across everybody. So the whare te reo Māori was the idea of how to manage that. We're not there as Nahiwi says, but we'll get there. I'll give Nahiwi another year and we'll be okay.
You know, I just to add to what I was saying, you know, we did the, we got a call from the minister about 7 weeks before Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. He wanted to have an event to celebrate the petition. And, you know, we had been really, really careful about getting offside around COVID regulations and things like that. So once he gave the call, we could proceed. And, you know, there were things there that were really, really difficult around getting everybody on the same page. We had something like about 10 agencies involved in the, you know, who contributed to the petition celebrations. And at times it was really, really difficult. And, but we got through them. That was the most important thing. Mā te aha I te try, ne? You know, if you don't try, you don't get anything. And look, I'm sure all the agencies and the people from the agencies that worked with us to get it to where it you know got to, which was a wonderful event on the day, wonderful 2 events, are really pleased with the part that they played. But you know, when you're trying to teach somebody to work in a new way or get people to work in a new way, there's always a bit of pain. But at the end of it, you look back and you say, okay, well, the pain was worth it. But the big thing for me is just getting clarity between the two sides of the whare, and that's not something that Poya and I can determine. It has to be determined at board level.
The model just needs to be, all the components need to be clear within the whare. The whare is more than just te mātawa and te taurewhiri. It's got every entity there was involved in language. We're perceived as being components, core components, but how to get them all to talk together and know and understand how you work together, how you have a single drive and a strategy. I think that's the challenge still before us. For te mātau, when you come to things like the Māori language, and representing the people, we can't just make a quick decision even as a board, because there's these iwi, 109 iwi. So hang on, you're supposed to represent us. We need you to communicate with us. So the Māori Language Act is under review right now. So we have to go back out to the tip of the North Island and to the extremities of the South Island to try and be as representative as we can. We haven't nailed that yet, but
A tōna wā. E pātai no?
E taituku ana i ngā mihi kia kōrua, i ngā kōrero kua whāriki hia e kōrua i te rānei. Ko taku pātai, kei te kaha ki te i ngā tari kāwanatanga e whakau ana i te reo Māori i roto i a rātou rautaki mahi. Hea kōrua whakaaro mo tērā, kāmutu māwai e rā rautaki e hanga.
O kia mātou o te taurawhiri tētahi wahanga e tautoko nei i ngā mea, i ngā tari ki te waihanga mai i a rātou mahere reo. E tika ana mā rātou tonu e waihanga mai, nā te mea, mōhio tonu rātou ki tō rātou horopaki. E pērā ana mō ngā iwi, ne. Te tauwhakamutunga i noho mai ai ngā moni hapuri kia mātou tonu. I mahi tahi mātou ki ngā iwi te kaumārima ki te waihanga kaupapa, e rite ai ki o rātou hihe mo te reo Māori. Ka toa rātou i tutuki. Nā reira pērā no hoki mō ngā tari, ko te mate hoki, he ruarua noiho te hunga e mōhio ana ki te kōrero Māori i roto i ngā tari nei. Nei, koe nei tētahi āhuatanga i āta kitea e ngā MLAG, te rōpu e noho i raro i a Rāwinia, te wā e waihanga ana rātou i te mea, i te turi mo te reo Māori. Kāore ngā tari nei, ngā whakahaere nei i mōhio ki te whakamahere mo te reo. Nā reira i puta i tērā āhuatanga kia mātou tonu i te turi mo te reo Māori. Nā reira, mā rātou tonu, mā ngā tari tonu e waihanga mai a rātou mahere, ko te mate hoki, kāre mātou e mōhio ana, mena ka pātai mai te minita ki au i tēnei wātonu, ngā hiwi, pehea hoki te whakatinanatanga o ngā mahere nei, o te mahi krauna anō hoki, kāre au e āhe ana te whakahoki atu ki āia. Nā te mea kāori i aua, e rā mōhiotanga ne. Nā reira, ko tāhau pātai tuatahi, mena e whakau ana ngā mahere, kāre au i te tino mōhio. Tāinoa mai ki te mutunga o te tau, te paunga o te taurāne, nā ka whakatikaina he pūrongo, mai i te kōrero haere ki ngā tari nei, mena i tutuki a rātou ngā huatanga o a rātou mahere. And sometimes I don't know if they're telling the truth too. So just to say that at the moment it's the responsibility of the agencies to do their own plans. We provide support. But we have no way of knowing at any particular time whether or not those plans are actually being implemented or whether they're actually successful, right until the end of the year when a survey is carried out and a report is produced, usually 6 months after the year has finished. So one of the things we're looking seriously at is what technological tool can we use that would allow us to be able to trace and track how the Mahi Krauna and how the language plans are being implemented.
Sa iungi te naka upapa ko te uatanga ki te mātau ai. I te wā e ako ana tētai kaimahi i te reo tana tari. I te wā e koroana ia, mōna te pai, e koroana rāna ia mo te pai o te reo. Me pene pētaku whakamau. Pena ka mai te tangata i tana pepeha, i wāngunu te iwi, he painga tērā mo te iwi, he painga rāne tērā mo te tangata i ki mai ana i akua i taku pepeha, ana ko hara mai te tuku taku pepeha ki a koe e te iwi Māori. Tawira no tērā. So that's a challenge for te mātau is, yes, do the language, but then what's the purpose of your language? So that you can practice on our iwi, because I can be pretty confident that when you practice in on your iwi, they do not want to be the recipient of that type of engagement. And for us, we take it, learn it, and provide an environment where when our people come into those government entities, they can be met by someone that's speaking the language they're comfortable in. So that's something for consideration. Whakaya nā iwi te mahi nui mo tēnā.
auro rangatira whareki mai nei ki. Ia mātou nei, ko leo, nā mea kei te kura i te tēnā kūro. Hoi anō.
Mike's not on.
Hoi anō. Haere tōni tā mei. O tērā, tērā pe he koha. Me mai koe he koha. You said you had a gift you wanted to present?
Already done.
Already done? Oh, ko oti ki. Hoi anō tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou. Whai tāme ki te whakarongo ki te tukurua nei. Me nā kōrero rangatira. Tēnei ta mihi, tēnei ta mihi. Tērā pe he waiata. Mike's.